Now, in our last module, Module 1, we looked at the curriculum cycle as a planning tool within the school, a planning, a monitoring, and evaluation tool. Now we're going to look at how do we put that curriculum cycle into the school context. Because it's not just used at school level, it should be used at a variety of different levels. Now, in every school, we obviously sit and we plan as a school. And hopefully, our plans include a goal where we get this from our vision and mission of the school, or from policy documents, or from just generally knowing what we want to improve. So if you think of from Module 1, where we looked at improving literacy, let's use that example again. If a school wants to improve their literacy, they're going to set that out as a goal. So through their goal, they're then going to do their planning. They're going to ensure that they plan for the improvement of literacy throughout the school. That might mean putting in extra English lessons. It might entail sending teachers on specific training courses on how to improve literacy. It might mean looking at different textbooks to use, different methods, and so on and so forth. Then from that planning, the school will focus that it actually happens in the implementation. They will make sure that that is carried out. Once that's carried out, the evaluation and moderation, although probably not a formal process of evaluation and moderation, but at some point they need to look and see, well, are they actually getting the results they want? Is the literacy and numeracy actually improving? Then they're going to report on how well has it improved or how well hasn't it improved, and what is the gap, and why haven't they achieved their goal, or why have they achieved their goal? And then, of course, the reflection will look at what should they change, what should they do differently. Now, a school generally does this once per year. Ideally, you want to see them doing it every term, but sometimes the school's just too busy. But the more important aspect is from the school's level of planning, this curriculum cycle needs to be filtered down into the phase. So now if you take a primary school, there's more than one phase in a primary school. In most primary schools, you've got foundation phase, intermediate, and 1 year of senior phase. Now, the way that you're going to improve literacy in foundation phase, grade 1, is going to be very different to the way you're going to improve literacy in senior phase. So what you want to see there is that the goal that the school has set goes down into that phase, but gets adapted and customized for the particular phase. So in their planning, it might mean specifically that they look at different methodologies that they use in the classroom. They might say, well, for foundation phase, we need to focus on these aspects rather than another aspect. In senior phase, they might be saying with the implementation, we need to do a lot more comprehension, a lot more reading, the learners aren't reading enough, and so on and so forth. So there are many different strategies that they can implement. But the key thing here is the different phases they might be the same, but might have different strategies. Right through to the reporting and reflection. This reporting and reflection needs to happen at phase level. And then, of course, the reporting and reflection that happens at phase level needs to be fed back into the school's reporting and reflection in order to relook at the school's goal and focus. On the next level, and as we said just now, your grades are also different. So not only your phases are different, but within your phases, your grades, different grades are going to do things in different ways, mainly because of the age and the level of knowledge and skills of the learners. But even more so, different subjects will be doing different things. So there we've put grade and subject. Schools can choose whether they want to focus on a subject or a grade level. In high school, it's often better to focus on a subject level because the way we improve literacy in history, for example, is going to be very different to the way we improve literacy in mathematics, both requiring literacy, but in a different way. And the methods we use may not be the same in those two different subjects. So at a grade and subject level, once again, you're going to have your specific goals. You're going to plan, you're going to implement. That implementation must be evaluated and moderated. First of all, we must evaluate and moderate and see whether the implementation is actually having an effect and whether the results are improving. And then, of course, you need to also look at, are the methods working? Reporting and reflection, very important. And once again, the reporting and reflection at grade and subject level needs to feed into the reporting and reflection at a phase level and then into a school level. I often get asked, when does this all happen? And the ideal time is when you have your phase, your grade, or your subject meetings. Because this is an ideal tool to base your discussions on. Your basic discussion on what is the planning? What planning have we done? Implementation, what are you doing in the classroom? What has worked, what hasn't worked in the phases, in the grades? And then, of course, reporting and reflection. So having a phase meeting or grade meeting or subject meeting is essential on a regular basis, but even more so that we discuss all these different aspects. Now, of course, the most important and probably the most forgotten level is the level in the classroom. We find that planning happens at a school level, often at a phase level, particularly if the phase heads meet on a regular basis. Grade and subject level, often the planning's done. And often at grade and subject level, the policy determines different aspects of how we carry things out. But the classroom level is the most neglected level. And we've got to make sure that our teachers on a daily basis, especially per lesson, are going through this curriculum cycle. Now, it's often difficult to understand what would they actually go through on a daily basis if they were doing different lessons. So I want to take us through, just step by step, the example of literacy, but as a teacher in the classroom. So down the left-hand side, you will see the 6 different elements, starting with goals and focus and ending with reflection. Now let's have a look at a teacher in the classroom. This particular teacher, the literacy is filtered through that we want to improve literacy from a school level right down and out into the classroom. So this particular teacher said she is going to improve comprehension in the classroom. That is her plan, or that is her goal. Her planning, she looks at her resources, her learners, her time available, which is often a big thing with the curriculum, her context, and her knowledge. And this is often the point where teachers say, well, I need some more input, I need some help. Planning and development is not necessarily getting someone else from outside in to do planning and development. Sometimes it means having a discussion with other teachers and saying, what do you suggest I do? How do I do this? Those important conversations. Then this teacher has decided in this case, and this is just an example, that to improve her comprehension, she's going to use graphics and questions to better develop the understanding of how to read, because she's realized that in her classroom, the learners can't comprehend because they can't read with understanding. So she's looked at this as the way she's going to do it. She tries it out, she uses the classrooms, and now she gets to a point where she needs to evaluate and see how she's done or how the learners have done. So she gives them a worksheet, and she's shown, and in this worksheet it shows that some learners have actually shown improvement. And she gets it internally moderated. So in other words, she asks one of her colleagues to look at the worksheet and say, is this of the correct standard or so on? Because you don't want to have a lower worksheet or a lower level and then look as though you've actually improved. And that's why internal moderation is so important. She then says, right, well, I haven't totally achieved my goal, but I have seen some improvement. So now I need to reflect. So when she goes to reflection, she says, right, she's going to carry on using her current method, but she's going to do it more regularly because she realizes she hasn't done it in every single lesson. She's done it in some lessons or in some methodologies, but she's going to do it more regularly, and hopefully that will feed in to her, back to her goal and focus. Now, do you see how this teacher has gone through this process? Now, a lot of teachers do this just naturally. They don't necessarily have to write it all down. But it's important that teachers go through this every step. What's a very good way of assessing whether a teacher has gone through this process is by asking them, what are you worried about in your classroom? What are you going to do differently? What goals did you set and didn't achieve? Or what goals did you set and did achieve? Now, if you give a teacher a while to think about it, they will come up with goals that they've got for every lesson. And I always say that it's important for us to have a goal in every lesson we teach. We cannot just walk into the classroom and teach the curriculum. We've got to have a key goal. Our goal might, in some cases, just be to improve comprehension. And the content we're using and the subject matter is just the vehicle we're using for it. Now we're going to look at one more example. And then once again, the example just highlights how we need to not only focus on planning at a school level or the curriculum cycle at a school level, but right down into the classroom level. The example here we're going to use is the introduction of technology into the school. Now, if we're going to introduce technology into the school, every classroom, every grade, every subject is different. We don't want to do a blanket rule for the entire school. But as a school, we need a planning, we need to have a process in place, and we need to check whether the introduction of technology is actually working or isn't working. So as a school, we're going to go through the curriculum cycle, right through from our setting our goals to planning, right through to our reporting and reflecting on whether the technology is working in the school. And again, in the reflection, what can we do better or how can we do it differently? But from the school level, we then want to go down into the grade level. Each grade is going to have different goals for technology. They're also going to plan differently. And more importantly, they're going to have a different report on how technology has worked in their grade. And that is going to feed into the main school's reporting and then reflection. On a subject level, it's also important to have subject-specific curriculum cycles. The introduction in technology in different subjects is going to be different. They're going to have different goals. They're going to have different implementation of it in the classroom. But even more importantly, they're going to have different feedback and reporting and reflection to feed back into the main school's curriculum cycle. And then, of course, as we said earlier, the most important is the class. What is happening in the classroom? Each individual teacher may have a different goal for the way they want to introduce, plan, implement technology in their classroom. They may also have a different report and reflect on how technology is working in their classroom. And this is essential for the school to see as a whole. If each of these levels are carried out in whatever the goal or focus of the school is, you will see a huge improvement in the results of the school, as well as achieving of the goals. Now, in both these cases, we've used very simple goals. The goal might be quite complex. There might be more than one goal. But what is really important is the communication, is to make sure that from the school level right down to the class level, the goals are communicated. But even more so, the reporting and reflection is communicated back up to the school and therefore to make improvements for your next goal. Now, before going on to your next module, which is curriculum planning, please go and do the assessment. It's a very short assessment, a matching columns assessment at the end of this module, and then you can move on to curriculum planning.